Good day. Welcome to another episode of the Business of Higher Ed podcast brought to you by the Fox Education. Today we are thrilled to be joined by Nicole Poff. She is the founder of EdCarta, which is a platform dedicated to bold insights and straight talk on higher education's toughest challenges. Nicole's a thought leader who pushes institutions to confront the uncomfortable truths sometimes about curriculum ownership, student success, and retention. Through EdCarta, she's challenging the status quo, writing candidly about strategic enrollment management, the hidden curriculum, program design, equity in student access, and what really drives outcomes in higher education. Her work has struck a chord with higher ed leaders across North America who are rethinking competition, finance, program strategy, and branding in today's rapidly shifting landscape. Now, what's neat is that Nicole doesn't just talk about theory, she delivers impact. She's shown how curriculum modifications can take student placement outcomes from single digits to over 80% success rates, which we're going to talk about in the podcast, and proving that smarter strategy, not more bureaucracy, is the real driver of institutional transformation. So, if you're a higher ed leader, a policymaker, or an innovator looking for an unfiltered perspective on curriculum retention and the business of higher ed, this conversation is for you. Nicole, welcome to the podcast. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, David. I am really excited for this.
Me as well. So, you have argued that no one owns the curriculum, even though it's central to retention, it's central to success. Can you explain what you mean by this? Why is this such a blind spot in higher ed, and how should institutions reframe curriculum as a strategic lever for enrollment, persistence, and outcomes?
Loaded question, but we'll dive into this. I'm really excited about this. So I view curriculum as your best asset. It is your best asset if students are in your classroom and they are thriving, they're loving it. They are going to go tell their friends and families, right? Naturally, it's going to work into conversations and that boosts your enrollment, right? And then you graduate these students who love your university, but also are very well prepared. They go out, they go into the workforce, and their employer's like, oh my gosh, this school is preparing awesome graduates. We love these students, right? We want more of them. That helps your job placement rates. So, all of these things that happen in the classroom have really positive effects outside of the classroom. The same thing happens when it's a negative experience. They don't refer their friends and family. They're a bad demonstration of your university in the workplace. But here's where I say there is a gap because there was kind of two parts to this question. You have, let's say, your provost, right? Your provost is sitting in lots of meetings. They're talking with student advisors. They're looking at the retention metrics. They're looking at all of these kind of student success metrics and they're trying to figure out, where do we make changes? Do we add to our student advising team? Do we increase our enrollment knowing that we lose 40% of our students? Do we just add more students, right? Is that where we spend? And then you have your director of curriculums, your academic affairs leaders, right? And they're looking at the curriculum and their metrics of success is not the retention metrics. Their metrics of success are we getting our courses delivered in time? Is the LMS shells ready, right? Are there no broken links? Are we on schedule? Did we launch this new program in time? Those are their metrics of success. So the director of curriculum or academic affairs or whatever it's called, because we have so many different labels in higher ed, right? They are not measuring retention in any of their metrics. They're looking at time to complete a course, all of those things. The provost over here is looking at retention. And so there's this gap because the person who owns it, right, or who owns the development of it, executing, they're not looking at the same metrics that the provost is. And I'll tell you why I know that there's a gap here is I keep having the same conversations with institutions where I'll meet with the provost, and this has happened literally so many times that it's really eye-opening. I'll meet with the provost, and the provost will say, to be candid, we're having retention issues. We do need a lot of curriculum help. I don't think our students are thriving in the classroom. I'm going to put you in touch with our blank, our dean, our program director, our director of curriculum, right? Any person who oversees the curriculum, I'm going to put you in touch with them and you can learn more about our curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
Go into a meeting with that person without them having any insight into what the provost said. And that person is like, we're great. We get all of our courses delivered on time. We have a team of 30 instructional designers. They're, meeting all their deadlines. They're working with the faculty. Like, we are a robust machine. We are doing awesome. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, what about your retention? And they're like, that's not me. I'm like, okay. So that is where I feel like there is this gap that really no one is owning in terms of curriculum retention. No one is really owning that. And even when we look at retention metrics in terms of curriculum, unpopular opinion, think there is very little bit of accountability. So we might hand DFW reports, right? Drop field reports down to our director of curriculum or our deans or program directors, but there's really not a lot of accountability in terms of 60% of students are failing this course. What changes are you going to do? And sometimes people wear that as a badge of honor, right? Sometimes people are like, yeah, I fail 40%. Good luck in this class. But if we think about student success and we're opening access and, all of these factors, then we really shouldn't be proud of a course that fails 40% of its students.
Yeah, ensuring that there is balance between the academic robustness and the outcomes that, like, you've got student affairs, you've got finance, you've got curriculum, you've got all these things in there, and is everybody talking to one another?
Exactly. And like you can hire all the student advisors, you can spend millions on student advisors.
Mhm.
But if students are not understanding the assignment prompts or
Mm,
there's all of these roadblocks, no amount of like, hoorah, keep going, student. I know that
yeah.
this sucks really bad, but just keep going. Like, no amount of that is going to repair the issues that are happening inside the classroom. I mean, we can hire advisors till we're blue in the face, but we have to like actually fix the problems.
That leads actually into the second question, which is what you've written about better, not more, when it comes to program development. Now, another podcast guest that I had, and this was one individual, but indicated to me that as a practical matter, it is often less complex to create a new program or a new course than it is to go back and I don't want to say fix, but change something in an existing course in terms of the process that you have to go through to get that approved. At a time when institutions are feeling a lot of pressure to launch new programs to stay competitive, how can leaders instead identify and elevate existing strengths without stifling innovation or growth?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think your guest is right. It is much easier to start new, to not want to fix, this program over here where only 40% of students are getting through. That's complicated, right? We need to figure out the bottlenecks. We need to figure out all the places in which students are not getting through the process. So it's much easier to say, all right, we're going to stand up a new master's, 12 programs. Let's just build them on up and off to marketing they go. That is much easier and less complicated. But I don't think complicated or complex should be part of what's in the best interest of the student,
Mm.
right? Like easier does not mean better for the students. It means easier for us But you and I have talked about this, right? Like higher ed is a business. I know
Yeah.
we're going to battle till the ends of our life on that one. But companies like Amazon or I don't know what other company, Apple, right?
Hmm.
Are they making decisions around what's easiest for them and their team or what's best for the customer, the user? I would not think that a company like Apple, let's say, is choosing modifications or features because it makes their lives easier. They're thinking of the users and how it makes their life easier. So from that perspective, I think higher ed, we can be a little bit self-absorbed because we can say this is easier for us to build new instead of fixing all these problems. So in a time in which, like you said, resources are lean,
Yeah.
um, there's still a lot of cost with building new, right? Like I was just looking at it was one article, but it said new program development to stand up a new program and acquire a decent amount of students would cost about $850,000
Really?
over time, right? You're paying your faculty, you're paying your instructional designers, you're paying your accreditor to do a substantive change and have the review team come in, right? There's all of these things. Plus, I think they said the average cost of student acquisition is like 7,000 to 12,000 per student to acquire a student. Um,
Now, just to
so
be clear, these are United States figures, United States. Yeah.
yes, USDs.
I'm not saying that they're necessarily off, but just to be clear.
Conversions, yes. Yeah, about USD figures. So if you think about that, and the coaching and
Yeah.
all the things that have to go along with the new program development,
Yeah. There's a lot.
there's a lot. So I think a lot of people get caught up in this price tag of, but if we have a new program, we could bring in X amount of revenue, right? And that's the number that gets in their head is like, we can bring in this amount of dollars. But on the other side, I think, what if you actually did the hard work? You fixed the programs that students were falling through. You tried to bring all of them back through. I would argue that that is actually doing more with the resources you have because you can rely on your faculty, your deans, your program directors, some instructional designers. You can revise those courses, figure out where students are struggling, have your enrollment advisors, your student advisors call those students back and say, we know we got it wrong. And again, higher ed's not going to want to do this. We know we got it wrong. Come back. Let us help you graduate and get that career that you wanted to get. We would recapture so much student tuition and probably get a lot of referrals out of the process, right? Because these students would now be raving fans and they would say, wow, this school really turned it around. I struggled, but they did me right and they improved. I got through it. And now I'm referring my friends and fans happily, right? Um, so I would say sometimes we get distracted by the price, by what we think the potential is. Um, I think in higher ed, we have this kind of mentality of if we build it, they will come,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Field of dreams mentality.
Right.
I've seen a lot of institutions where they'll build a new program thinking that they're going to, let's say, rely on their alumni. They're like, well, we had this bachelor, so if we offer this master's, then
Right.
we can just shuffle. And when their enrollment team goes and calls all those graduates, they're like, heck no, that was the worst 4 years of my life. I would never do a master's with you guys, right? Like,
It's what you want to
that's
hear. Yeah.
yeah. Again, if we're just improving what we have, then it's just creating a better process for ourselves where we have students who are happy. And when they do finish their bachelor's and they want to go for their master's, in my opinion, if you love your university and they have your choice, you had a BSN, now you need an MSN, it should be a really clear, I want to go back to my alma mater because I had such a great experience.
Mm.
So if we get it right the first time in the classrooms, in the lived experience that students are having, we can just kind of snowball from there.
Uh, have you had conversations where those types of things have come up, and how do you determine? I mean, I guess you could say how much enrollment is there, but where is the line when you say, okay, you know what? this dog has had its day, and it's time for new.
Yeah, that's a great question because I do think higher ed, as much as we like to build new shiny things, we also stumble on legacy items. We love the way that we've always done it. We love our legacy programs. We know that if we try to sunset programs, we're going to see certain faculty resistance, right? Like we know
Yes.
all these things. And so we hang tight to tradition
Yeah.
and things that we feel like have worked historically. And then we say maybe they're just going through a bad time. So, to answer your question, I think there's a couple signs that it's time to reconsider the life of a program, right? One of them would be job outcomes.
Right.
If you are
Yeah.
graduating students from a program and they are not getting employed in their field or even a job that requires a bachelor's degree, I'm going to say we need to let go of that one.
Hmm.
Um, or or if it is a field in which they don't actually need a bachelor's degree, so they're acquiring a large amount of
Yes.
debt, early childhood education is one of those where a lot of times you need a degree to progress, but entry level with no
Yeah, it's a
experience.
regulated profession, so you need something, right? But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So really, in my opinion, we should be looking at those student outcomes of, does
Mhm.
this degree make sense? Are we getting students on the right track for their careers, for their personal lives? Um, obviously flat enrollment. If you have a program that students just aren't interested in, you know, then that's a tell sign too. Ultimately, to me, all of this comes back to the students. What's in the best interest of the students? Are they getting employed? Are they interested in your programs? Because when we eliminate things, then we do make space for some really cool new stuff, right? If we can acknowledge, hey, these four programs, we've seen really low enrollment. And so now we're kind of negative because we're paying our faculty, we have student advisors on staff, right? All of these, we could take that money and reinvest it in some new program development that would serve our students better. Then we're kind of balancing the the best of both worlds, right? But we have to be willing to
Yeah.
say goodbye to tradition and things that sometimes we love a lot, or sometimes that, I think of like during COVID, right? We saw a lot of nursing programs explode. And then, at least in the US, they exploded. Crazy growth for schools. And then that has started to kind of like taper down. And
Mm.
so, really looking at, is this still the way our university wants to go?
Hmm.
Is this still what our student wants? But I think sometimes we can just cling on to like, we know that this was loved at one point, and we hope that at one point it's loved again.
There's
Yeah.
so many things that go into this when you really dig down into it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we don't want to, I mean, I think a lot of our resistance towards sunsetting programs is figuring out what we're going to do with those faculty, right? Like we know I mean, I probably simplified it and was not very sensitive to the topic.
No, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, though. I guess that's part of the challenge of leadership. That's part of the challenge of modern education.
Absolutely. And if you have faculty members where you're like, man, we don't want to sunset the program. They're really awesome instructors. They're really great with the students. Then I would say, where else can they fit, right? If you're going to grow into new programs, is there opportunity for them there? Is there opportunity within faculty development, right? If they are great with students and they're great faculty, well, then we should have them training and making new faculty great, right? So I think sometimes we also get stuck in this is a blank instructor. They
Hmm.
must do this. Um,
Hmm. Now, here we're coming to what I was referring to in the introduction. You have said, I move retention numbers with curriculum modifications, taking placement outcomes from single digits to over 80%. Can you share an example? And we've touched a bit on this, but can you share an example of how you achieved that and what institutional leaders could learn from your approach?
Absolutely. And I think, retention and then job placement, those are going to be two separate strategies, but ultimately both instances were solved through the curriculum. And
Hmm.
the way we solve them, I'm going to sound like a broken record here, is looking at student data. So from
Hmm.
a retention perspective, um, there's been a couple times historically where I've encountered programs where I'm like, man, students, we're about a 60% retention rate here. Let's figure out what's going on, right? And so we use student progression data to figure out where are students progressing and then where are they failing or having to retake or pausing for long periods of time and then maybe never coming back. And
Hmm.
we look at those courses specifically, right? Most of the time we can find those bottlenecks. And then once we know it's this course, right? I'm going to say EDU 100 for the sake of the
Sure.
example.
Sure.
We then look at EDU 100 and we look at the faculty surveys, right? What are students saying about the faculty? We look at end of course surveys.
Hmm.
So for the last 2, 3 years, what are students saying about this course? And just like a true research project, we start to code all the themes, right? And we start to see the reoccurring things of what students are saying. Um, Another part of that is talking to our student advisors, because I will say I've done this multiple times now. And student advisors always know in these trouble spots where students go wrong. And a lot of times that doesn't make it to the surveys. And I finally realized it's because some of the students aren't getting to the end of the course, so they're not getting that survey, right?
Oh,
The
okay.
ones who are getting it, they're typically getting it in the end weeks, which
Yes.
means that they've
Right.
gone through the class.
Right.
So the advisors know the students who dropped it and why they dropped it. And so the advisor input, I always say, don't sleep on student advisors. Their input is like gold because they are the
The
ones working.
trenches.
Yeah, they're there. You can go to any graduation, and when a student sees their advisor, I mean, they're hugging and they're crying and they're like,
Yeah.
girl, we've been through it, right? Like I was holding a baby and my advisor was on the phone with me telling me to keep going.
Yes.
So they know you can say, tell me about these 4 classes. I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
one part that you really have to be cautious with advisors, especially as leaderships, is there is really weird power dynamics between academics and advising, where a lot of times advisors, and this is across institutions, are very reluctant to share their honest feedback with deans or program directors or faculty because they are very worried about the feedback being dismissed or
Hmm.
overstepping. I've had to work with advising teams where it has taken a lot of me digging to actually get the answers because the first meeting I have, they're so politically correct, right? And they're very cautious with what they say and they're not disrespectful. Um, and then the second meeting, we start to get a little bit more trust, right? And they open up a little bit more. The best survey results is when you do a survey that is anonymous.
Right.
You can get some really good input from advising there too, because you can't tie it back to them and they're just a little bit more honest with their feedback. So I will say, if you're a leader and you're asking your advising team and they're saying everything is great, it's probably not true. They're just
Yeah.
probably not being honest with you, right? Um, and then I always say, kind of another part of this, getting back to the process, is looking at the actual course itself and auditing the course from like a very objective standpoint. Um, I've seen where in week one, there's 6 assignments due.
Right.
And it's like, well, if a student is just orienting themselves to the course and there's 6 assignments due, they might just leave right you know, before week one ends. Low stake quizzes. If students start doing poorly with low stake quizzes, 5 points, even if they're not doing well, their confidence gets a little bit rocked, right? So
Hmm.
looking for signals in the curriculum itself, from like an objective standpoint,
Okay.
if I was a student taking this course, what would intimidate me? What might make me head to the exit and choose a different class or drop out for a couple of, terms, right? And so we look at the course. So then we have, you know, these are the three parts where these are the three courses students are getting stumbled on. Here's what they're saying about faculty. Is there a reoccurring faculty member that the problem lies with? Here's what they're saying about the courses. Is there trends with, the feedback they're giving us? Here's what advising is saying, and here's what our audit says. And from there, we have a pretty good roadmap of the changes that need to happen within these courses. So that's kind of from the curriculum standpoint. Sometimes we have learned that the roadblocks are when students get to like a clinical portion. So, maybe it's a clinical class and the student was responsible for finding the clinical themselves. So maybe it's a student
Oh,
teaching, maybe it's an internship. In the US, that's I don't want to say it's popular, but they really try to put ownership on the student to find a site that they want to work with, right? So if
okay.
it's a student teacher, they'll say, what school do you want to do your student teaching at? And then the student is expected to go and find that placement themselves. Um, that can be hard for like our first gen students, our students who don't have
Absolutely.
access.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if they don't have their clinical sites or their externship sites or their internships, whatever, again, so many words we use, whatever we're calling that practicum, if they don't have that site lined up, then they can't go to that class. And then sometimes they just drop out indefinitely, right? Because they just don't know how to do it. So I've seen schools sometimes where they say, if our team helps you, you have to go to that site, even if it's 50 miles from your house, even if it doesn't work with your work schedule, right? Like that, I have seen as a huge stumbling block for some of these programs is these practicums portions.
So, if higher education leaders truly embrace this framework, how would it change the way they collect the data? I think we actually touched a bit on this already. Design policy measures success. And what's an example of a push factor that institutions and leaders consistently underestimate?
Getting back to your question, so push pull factors. This is a model that is used again a lot in K through 12. I love K through 12 so much. Um,
Okay.
they look at these push pull factors. So, what's pushing a student out the doors and what's pulling them out the doors. So, a lot of times in higher ed, when students depart, we track that, right? When they leave our university, we have them fill out a form and it has very generic, like, why are you leaving? And they can choose medical, family, right? All these things. And so it would be very easy for an institution to say this student left because they relocated, right? That's a pull factor.
Okay.
Okay, that's we would classify that as a pull factor. They relocated. But if you have an online campus
Right. Okay.
and a student listed relocation and you're classifying that as a pull, I see that as a push because a lot of times institutions have policies that don't let students cross modalities easily.
Yeah.
If
Okay.
you're an on ground student, it's hard to transfer to online. And so there's students like, I want to go online, but I have, a balance or my financial aid isn't packaged that way, right? And so they can't just hop into the online.
Hmm.
Um, and so again, the school was like, nope, we're good. They're relocated. There was nothing we could have done about it. When really, if our policy would have allowed it, a student, their location, especially if we have an online, if we are geographically bound, then relocation is a true pull factor. But if we have online and a student chooses relocation, I'm going to say that's push. Um, same things with like life circumstances, right? Sometimes people will just say, oh, life just got too overwhelming for them and it pulled them
Yeah.
away. Yes, but if we are marketing to students in a way in which we say, you're a busy adult learner, you're juggling, we have commercials, right? And they're holding babies and they're
Yes.
and we're
Laptop in
saying,
bed with the light, the bedside light.
yes, yes, yeah,
Yeah.
all of those, right? And we're painting this picture of you're a working adult, you have a family,
Hmm.
all of these things, and then life pulls them away. That actually might be an indicator that we're not quite the school that we think we are. Maybe we aren't designed for these adult learners balancing. And I know that I'm oversimplifying this because I know Carnegie hours and accreditation and all of these things are at play. I'm very well aware of that. But I think a fallacy that we hold on to in higher ed is that rigor and flexibility can't coexist.
That's a really good point. That's a really interesting point to that you make there. Yeah.
Like somehow if we say you can turn in your assignment 4 days late, we're being less rigorous. They're not. We can do both.
Hmm.
And I would argue that if a student is pressed for time and they have to submit something because no late work is accepted and they only have 2 hours to do it, you're going to probably get a very subpar
Right.
AI generated
Right.
assignment versus a student who can
Right.
come to you saying, my baby is sick. We were in the ER all night. I have to work in the morning. Can I please have 2 more days to do this? You're probably going to get a much better quality written paper because you gave the student the time to actually dedicate the space to it. Um,
It's
yeah,
it's an interest. It's what I'm thinking as you're talking about this. Do you see more and less of this view depending on the program? So I came through a business program, accounting, then I came through law, and we used to have 100% finals. Like
yeah.
nothing during the semester, and then 100% in the finals. Do you see changes, or are people, is it starting to everyone move forward, or are we still, some areas are stronger than others?
That's such a good question. And the answer is yes. It is very, in my opinion, it's very field college specific. So our education friends, love them. They're so flexible because, you know, so many of them came through that K-12 background that for them, their primary goal is that the student learns things,
Yeah,
right? Like at the
right,
heart of it.
right,
Um, and that they're modeling the same behavior that they would want their students to show their students, right? Flexibility, grace, all of these things. So our education friends, our social work friends, right? The helping professions, they are very flexible and graceful and all of these things. On the other side of this, we have not a popular opinion, nursing. Um,
hmm,
we have our nurses who are very checklist and rigorous, right? And their rationale is they have good logic. It's we have lives on our hands, right? We
yeah,
can't afford to misstep when we're dealing with human lives.
hmm,
Um, and B, in the field, there are just checklists. So you as a student, I am teaching you how to be a good clinician. And I've heard nurses say, my heart is not to be a mean old faculty member here, right? My faculty or my heart as a faculty member is to prepare them to be great clinicians. And the way I do this is through high accountability, high expectations, right? Like, no, my heart is this. I want them to go into the hospitals and be awesome.
right.
Um, so for nursing, particularly, there's less flexibility, and I think it's because of the industry. Law is probably another really good
Yeah,
example
yeah.
of a stricter, and law sometimes I think there's a lot of legacy items. Like I was helping yeah, you're nodding. I was helping a school during COVID move from on ground to online.
Hmm.
And the faculty member was like, they have to go to a law library. I'm like, well, it's COVID and a lot of libraries are closed. Is there a way we can do this online? They're like, nope, nope. This is the way I did it. So this is the way
That's
that it
well,
must be
that's
done.
right there. It's what you said. This is the way that I did it. This is the way that we did it.
And sometimes when we can just get back to the basics, look at all your policies and say, who is this policy serving? Is it serving us? Is it serving the students? Like, why does this policy exist? And when I've done that with institutions, sometimes no one can figure out why a policy exists, right? They're like, oh, we don't know. Or
Right.
sometimes it was, we had this policy because we had this tech in place, and the tech would prevent students from doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, well, do you still have that tech? No. So then can the policy go? Yeah, probably, right? Like
I
it
guess. Yeah.
have you heard the like old wives' tale of like the pot roast? Like the mom would like make a pot roast in the crock pot and she would always cut off both sides,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it was just like because it was too big, but historically it just people always cut off the ends, but they didn't know why they cut off the ends. I think higher ed, we're stuck in a little bit of like a pot roast situation.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Bureaucracy. We've talked bureaucracy and governance. What processes or governance structures have you seen that help institutions move faster while still maintaining the rigor and the ownership?
That
Or have
feels like
you
an
seen
oxymoron.
structures?
Yeah, feels like an oxymoron. Um,
Well, we were talking before, like we were talking about, for example, continuing ed, okay,
yes.
and how industry would say, okay, we would like this continuing ed, we would like this learning, to upskilling, reskilling to be done, and you, the university or the college, you're very good at this, but it's just taking too long.
Yes.
So um, maybe not a perfect example, but
Yeah, a good example of how it's hurting us, I
yeah.
think, is really, where I can kind of answer here is our governance processes are so slow. And we learned during COVID, we could move fast. Like I think that was a big takeaway. And then we've all have shifted back to like little turtles again. But we know that we have a fast mode. We just have turned it back off.
Mm,
And I see a lot of schools where they're like, okay, we have this new program. And I'm like, why was it written 5 years ago? And they're like, oh, that's how long it took to get through governance. And I'm like, well, your new 5-year-old program is now an old new program, right? You haven't even launched this. There's no butts in the seat. And this curriculum was designed
right.
5 years ago because it got so hung up in governance. So I think where I've seen, and I think a lot of schools are still really working this out because this is a legacy item of higher ed, right? It is a staple of higher education system is governance, and I'm going to kind of attach academic freedom with it, right? This checks and balance and this ability to be free as a faculty member. All of these things kind of swirl around.
Hmm.
And I think um a lack of definitions really get in our way. Like what actually is academic freedom? What counts for academic freedom and what doesn't count for academic freedom? And I know that definitions exist, but just because they exist don't mean that they're used or believed in, right? Like we can have a definition can exist, at least in American education.
Hmm.
So a school might say, we're going to update the LMS and make like a very same structure so that when students are going from course to course to course, it's all similar. And faculty might raise their hand and say, that is a breach of academic freedom. But because we haven't defined what academic freedom is very well, and it's not universally accepted, they can say, no, that's academic freedom. No, that's academic freedom. No, that's academic freedom. So I think lack of definitions, even institutionally, if every institution could define, here's what academic freedom is and here's what academic freedom isn't, I think they could get a lot of things done quicker. Same thing with governance. I've
Hmm.
been at a I've seen a lot of institutions where they don't even really know what goes through governance versus like, should this go through governance? Does it
Hmm.
need to go through governance? Right? Like there's really no path of we have this initiative. What is the proper channel here? I had on my podcast, I had the provost from San Francisco Bay University,
Hmm.
and I loved that episode because he basically when they were creating San Francisco Bay, they said nothing, there's no legacy items. Everything is up for debate. We can get rid of all of it. And so for them, they have a very lean governance process that actually it allows them to move initiatives through very quickly so that it's still relevant by time it hits the students or the employers. But their belief, and I love this so much, is that we don't need to waste faculty's time in the governance meetings. Faculty time is best spent in the classroom, in the hallways, playing chess with students, doing all of those things that make the students love the university, feel connected to the university. That's where they, San Francisco Bay, want their faculty spending time, not debating over, line by line by line policies and initiatives and things like that. Like for them, they're just like, they don't need to be concerned with that because we need them with the students.
So
Um,
you've got to have a particular type of faculty, though, that believe, agree, I guess, with that. That's
yes.
the other piece of it. Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. That type of model you could not plop onto, I would say, a majority of campuses as it stands. And I think that is an area right now in which higher ed is really stalling because we have kind of this like divide, right, of new and old, and we're trying to figure out how it works, and we're stumbling over each other and we're fighting. We're like, this goes through governance. No, it doesn't need to go through governance. We don't know what needs to go through governance, right? And this is the way we've
Mm.
always done it. Well, we want to do something new, and we're just stepping all over each other. And I don't know how that gets solved. I truly don't know how that one gets solved, especially too when we go back to like, some people think that their purpose as an educator is to be in front of the classroom teaching from a, PowerPoint, and all the wonderful things in their brain are to be transferred to their students without any input from employers or from students, right? It's just this like very, I'm going to say elite, right? This like very elite mentality of, I know what you need and I'm giving it to you. Versus there's others who are like, what does the industry need? What does the community need? What does our local area need? What does the student need, right? And I'm going to take all of these things and I'm going to work this into my class. And those are two very different teachers, but they
Mhm.
can be teaching for the same institution. And how do you get those two teachers
Yeah.
to agree if they're on the same committee or in their, in the governance process? How are they going to agree? I'll wrap this up, but I have a really good example of, we had one, I was at a school, and some faculty believed if I extend a student's test, I have to extend all the students' tests, right? If I do it for one, I have to do it for all.
No, we call this snowball argument in law.
Okay.
Yes.
So this was, if I do it for one, I have to do it for all, and I don't want to do it for all, so I'm not going to do it for one, right?
Mhm.
In that same university, there was another college who they made exceptions all the time. And
Mm.
their argument was, if a house is on fire on a street, does a fire truck distribute water equally to all the houses?
Uh-huh.
Or do they put all the water on the house that's burning down, right? And would all the other houses need to be doused in water? Or could they spend all their water on the house that's burning, right? And it's the equity, and I know
Right.
we need to be careful with that word, but all that to say, if that's under one university and there's multiple colleges within that university and they can't even get aligned with a student wanting to retake a test or an extension on a test, I mean, if something as simple as that can't even be agreed upon, then how can we move forward these large initiatives in a timely manner, right? Like,
I think that we recognize the needs that students need to have a wide range of skills and a wide range of abilities. Uh, what is your experience with schools in terms of whether that is happening? Are you seeing more of it? Um, what's your experience?
yeah, I think, I mean, it's varied. I am seeing a lot more schools kind of cross their programs, and it really is, I mean, the way that they explain it, a way in which they can increase class sizes, right? So if they bring writing classes into business programs, and students aren't typically signing up for writing outside of maybe those majors, it's a way to bring those class sizes up, so that there's more students enrolled in those writing courses because now they're now part of the business courses. Um, I've seen some colleges where they are now requiring minors, so they've reduced the number of major courses to
Mm,
allow for a minor that doesn't extend time to completion, because that's always been kind of the tricky part, right? Is sometimes if you choose a minor, you're extending, 4 to 8 more classes, and that impacts your time to completion. So they've reduced the number of major courses. So the students have to take a minor, and the minor has to be out of their major area,
mm,
separate from it, right? So their business, and
mhm,
maybe they choose photography as their minor,
mhm,
or flip flop, right? Maybe they're nursing and they choose business as a minor because
mhm.
maybe they are going to be in private practice one day.
Right.
And so knowing the business components would be helpful. I think that's a really good, innovative idea of how to start kind of cross pollinating. But I think what you said is right in that our students need skills beyond just what they're going to school for. Like I graduated with a bachelor's degree in child development.
Hmm.
I worked in child development for maybe 3 months and was like, I don't want to do this. But all of my courses were child theory and how to work with children, right? Like it would have been really great if I had additional skills. Now, you can say that that's what gen ed is supposed to do, but like those chemistry classes and astronomy classes and history classes, those really didn't serve me a great deal as I needed to transition into a different career, right? Like I couldn't be like, I'm not going to be a child development, but I'm not going to work in child development, but I took this astronomy class. So I'm going to go be like an astronomer, right? I don't even know if that's the correct term.
Hmm.
Um, so all that to say, like, yes, we should be cross pollinating our programs, giving students multiple pathways to kind of choose. And I think we should help show them the intersections that they might not even see themselves. So, you know, nursing, again, I'm going to go back to if a nurse wants a private practice or they want to go into like facials and skincare, having that business background is
Yeah.
going to be good. Education, same thing. There's a big business in tutoring, consulting, things like that. I would argue that a lot of students would have value in business type courses, even just some sort of fundamentals.
I think that reskilling sometimes is in respective areas that maybe we could have addressed in university or in college, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Teaching them and giving them the tools, right, to
Right.
reskill, and here's how you seek that out. I mean, kind of an unpopular opinion of mine is that we have students spend a lot of time in those gen ed courses that we think is promoting things like critical thinking and problem solving, right? That's always been the best argument that I have seen for gen ed, is like we're creating this well-rounded student who can problem solve and think critically. Um, I would argue there's a better way to do that, and some of it might be business courses. Like make business part of gen ed, make business courses a part of your gen ed core curriculum requirements, right? um, Bake those lifelong learning reskilling concepts into that gen ed portion. Like there's a lot, our students are kind of following this like matrix of you need 3 math classes and 3 English classes, and then they get to the end and they're like, wait, my university has been telling me this whole time exactly what I need to do. And then now I'm here and no one is telling me what I need to do.
Mm.
And I think that that's harder to solve, but it would certainly address them having those basic business skills when they get out. It would address them being able to upskill or reskill, right? Just to move around when their chosen career path doesn't go as planned.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
yeah.
you've talked about exploring how merging academic and student affairs can close those critical gaps. So, what does the ideal partnership between these units look like, and how does that alignment reshape not just the curriculum, but the business of higher ed itself?
Totally. I think what it ultimately looks like is expanding the table, right? Like right now, our courses are very much driven by whatever the faculty and program director and dean say, this is what constitutes this program, right? Like it's going to be 12 courses for a master's degree. It's going to be these 12
Okay.
courses, these topics, and they decide, right? But what if we brought in career services and we said, we want an MBA? And I've seen this done at school. So this is not hypothetical, right? Career services, we want to redo an MBA program. What do employers need right now, right? And career services goes and they talk to the employer and they look at the job boards and they do all this research and they say, here's the skills that employers are really needing. And then I also saw this school really cool do the same. They looked at their enrollment data and they had a, a question, what do you want to do with this degree? And they were able to figure out that students enrolling in the MBA, there were basically three main personas. One was students who wanted to promote within their current organization. Second, by largest category, was entrepreneurs. And the third was just someone who wanted to advance their career within a chosen profession. So, not maybe necessarily within the organization, but they just wanted like a manager or a director title. And so, with those three personas and a map of what employers were wanting provided by career services, they were able to bring into advising, see, does this all track? Does this align? Yes, it does. Then the program directors, deans, faculty were able to create courses, not what they thought the students needed, but what the students actually needed based on their career goals and the employer needs. And then they could map out, okay, this is where these students are getting these skills.
Mm-hmm.
For the entrepreneur student, they can choose this type of assignment. For the career, what
Right.
assignments
Yeah.
can they do that are going to translate to the real world, right? Like it just brings this kind of holistic perspective to, the picture, like to the table. I mean, we can all come together to create like really cool things, but we have to like put down egos,
Yeah.
put the students in the center, put the community in the center, put employment. Sometimes people don't think that employment is an important part of.
Are you seeing are you seeing those buzzwords as well? Like,
Oh, yeah, everyone thinks that they have the best programs aligned to the employers. And when you're like, how'd you do
uh,
that? They're like, well, our faculty,
right.
they
Faculty
have
worked in,
experience in the field,
yes,
right?
yes.
Or
That's right.
or maybe they've have an advisory board that meets, every 3 years,
Right.
right? And they
Yeah.
look over the
Yeah.
curriculum every 3 years. That to me, again, going back to the need to know what skills are needed now, having your advisory board meet every 3 years is just simply not sufficient. um, I also think too, sometimes we can be a little bit tone deaf. Like if our courses suck and we want students to feel, like they belong, we're like, hey, there's free cookies in the student union. We have all these initiatives that we're like, oh, this is really cool. But is it actually supporting the students where they need to be supported? I think these are really important questions to ask. Like, free cookies are cool, but if a student is drowning because their courses are so overloaded, they're not even going to have time to go get your free cookie. Like, but you feel good about it. You're like, oh, we make 500 cookies to give out to students. Good job, us, right? And I this probably sounds so critical,
No,
but
but it brings it back again. It keeps coming back to the people that are making the cookies, whoever they are, talking to the people who are teaching, talking to the students who it just it comes back around again and again, right?
yeah,
So the career services committees, those are good things. Those are good things, but augmented by other things. Hot take. You have a college or a university comes to you right now. and they say, okay, curriculum, we'll do curriculum. We're having a hard time. We're in, you know, I'll give you the Canadian example. Our large portion of our student base has been cut through immigration reform. Um, we are, let's say, a rural or a northern school, maybe. Um, and yeah, we're curriculum, we're trying to figure out where we put our resources. Obviously, we want this to be an academically, rigorous programs that we offer. Having said that, we don't have all the resources in the world necessarily to throw at this. We can't look at this. We would like to look at it in decades, but at this moment, we really can't look that far. We can kind of, what is your best piece of advice? What is a key piece of advice you would give? Just
The fact that they're even asking these questions is good. It puts them in a winning spot. When I hear leaders say, how can we create programs that are relevant for our students tomorrow? I'm like, you're going to win because you're asking that question. Like, I already know because you're asking that question, you're in a much better place than a lot of universities who are in this time of what you've described, right? Turmoil, so much turmoil, um, in just a lot of different ways. Some universities are choosing to just sit and they're like, we have a little bit of cash and we're going to protect it. We're going to sit on it and we're not going to make any changes until we know which way, everything is going. Then react. We will react to the situation, right? I I would say we want to take a more proactive approach, right? And really figure out as a university, what is our mission? What is our mission? Like ultimately, what are we trying to do and bring to our students, to our community? If we are a local geographic based campus, well then the first thing I would do is figure out what does the community need, right? What employment opportunities exist, what job fields, are growing, what job fields are shrinking. Like you need to bring those stakeholders to the table to figure out your next move and how you can really rally behind your community and say, we're here, we got you. If you're an online space, well, then the world is yours, right? You just have to figure out what fields are growing, what fields students are interested in, and follow that. Or if you have good, robust students or programs, you might double down on those. You might say, we know that we have the best teacher prep program. All of our teachers get placed in the field 100%. They're happy, they're satisfied. This is a great program. You might double down on that. And that's where you spend your enrollment or your marketing budget to capture more students. Because again, if your mission really is to, let's say, teach teachers how to teach, then double down on that. I think right now a lot of schools are just trying to cast really wide nets. And if they could shrink it down and figure out what ultimately are we trying to do, they could do it really, really well. But I don't think sitting still is a good option. And I know that that was pretty theoretical.
well, and sitting still is a decision in and of itself, really, right? And so I think conversations like this are really, really important. The curriculum, I mean, as you said, it doesn't belong to anyone necessarily, but it's at the core of what you're offering.
It's
Uh,
your product.
it's right. So this has been an amazing learning opportunity for me, and it will be for our listeners as well. Nicole, I want to thank you very much for your dedication of time and your sharing of your expertise. Um, Nicole's bio for our watchers. Nicole's bio will be in the comments below. Um, as always, if you have any questions or comments, or if you have an idea for something else you'd like to see covered in the podcast, please put it in the comments below. Nicole, Thank you very much. And to our audience, have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thanks, David.